when we can go.
Get him distracted. I know. Look, that guy. One guy, yeah. Yeah, some people.
Yeah, I have an issue with my pen on like other computers, so I think it
Well, certainly.
might be a problem.
He won anything along, he's not gonna win anything
Yeah,
either.
well, these guys are all jockeying for cabinet positions and stuff.
We're set? All right.
Explain. Ready?
Welcome to the August 24th, 2023 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir.
No, very good. First order of business will be approval of the minutes for the June 23rd, 2023 Planning and Zoning meeting.
Motion to approve?
Move to approve, second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. We've got 3 agenda items tonight. 2 of them are items that are not on consent, and 1 is a public hearing. We'll begin with the first item that is not on consent, and that is Genesis Industrial. And this is a request for a major site plan approval for a multi-building industrial park to be known as Genesis Industrial. Phineas Holdings LLC is the owner, MBV Engineering Incorporated is the agent. This is located on the south side of 45th Street, approximately 1,500 feet west of 43rd Avenue. The zoning is IG, General Industrial. The land use designation is CI, Commercial Industrial. Any declarations of ex parte communications on this? Seeing none, will anyone who would like to speak on this and the next item on non-consent please stand and get sworn in? Thank you. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick Murphy, Senior Planner, will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Ryan. As the chairman stated, the site is located on the south side of 45th Street, about 1,500 feet west of 43rd. You can see here on the map, 43rd on the right side of your page. 45th is to the north of the site. From here forward, all of the slides you'll be seeing, the north orientation is now to the right side of the page. This is a site laid over the aerial. You can see that the site is sparsely wooded. It used to be an agricultural grove. There are some trees located in the south and along the east side. Many of the smaller oak trees along that south side will be preserved as part of this project. The site plan is 5 buildings. The north building is 25,000 square feet. It orients east-west, and the buildings 2 through 5 are all 20,000 square foot buildings each, running south of this building. This is a flex-use warehouse-type building set up for being very flexible in the types of office and warehouse that you can put in here. Staff is expecting this to be sort of like a contractor trade type of a use based on its setup. There won't be a whole lot of like outside storage you'll see with the paved and defined parking spaces in here, but this will lend itself really well to contractor trades. Traffic circulation, you see that the access is full access driveway, both left ins and left outs, right in, right outs as well. The main traffic circulation is that dark red box running around the site. It does have a driveway that goes through the center of the site, as well as north, south, and east-west. So it's a very good circulation plan. As part of this project, the developer is required to construct a westbound left turn lane into the project at the driveway. That'll be required before the site CO is issued for this project. Stormwater plan, as most sites you'll see come before you, the stormwater pipes are underneath the pavement. There's catch basins that collect the water that runs off laterally to it, and then it directs it into the southwest portion of the site into a dry fawn. This is a two-stage stormwater system required by St. John's River Water Management District for certain projects of a size and soil type. The water flows first to the dry pond. It has a series of pipes underneath, sort of like a French drain, that immediately collects that water and sends it into the wet pond. There's a flat concrete weir in between that if the dry pond ever gets too high, it'll immediately flow into the wet pond. The water will stage in these two different ponds and percolate into the water table after it's treated. In times of excessive rainfall, it will pop to the north. You see a little skinny blue line at the bottom of the page that takes it to the Indian River Farms Canal that runs along the south side of 45th Street. The landscape plan, along 45th Street is a 25-foot Type B landscape buffer required by code. The front building will have foundation planting on both the east and west sides of the building and small areas that wrap along the north side of the building, thus giving it a very nice landscape appeal. You try to dress it up as much with you have sort of a warehouse building, you put the best face you can on it. Behind that, you'll see a sort of a flattened oval dark green. That's an existing, very poor quality wetland that is being filled. It does not need to be mitigated due to its size and its poor quality. It's actually a catchment. It's not really it's a man-made area. They used to use it to draft to irrigate the agricultural activities. In the south, very south, is a 40-foot wide Type A landscape buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature. That is due to the presence of residentially zoned properties to the south of the site. The wet pond will have littoral plantings and lakeshore trees. Staff recommendation, staff recommends that the PZC approve the major site plan for Genesis Industrial with conditions listed in the staff report. Specifically, those conditions are to pay the required fee in lieu tree mitigation, construct a required westbound left turn lane, install all required primitive buffer and landscape improvements, and install all required on-site infrastructure improvements. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Patrick. And any staff questions? We'll start on my right. Or any commissioner questions? None on the right? Any on the left? Mark?
Without an elevation, I'm trying to imagine what these are going to be like. Is it something similar to, let's say, 8th Street and Old Dixie with the office in the front and a garage door in the back?
That's correct, yes. Most of the units will have a small office up front and then the warehouse in the back to store any materials that they have in the course of their business. But it's pretty much a general design. You can move the office around, you can enlarge a little more, but that's the basic layout of each of the units.
And they're going to be rentals, I guess, instead of condos?
Correct, yes. It's all lease space.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the left? Go ahead, Chip.
These are trades locations, not mini warehouse locations.
Correct. This would not be a self-storage facility.
You good? I've got one question. Will the weir between the wet and dry overflow constantly hold water?
It will not, no.
It will not?
It's only going to transfer if that dry pond happens to fill up. If we get too much rain at one time, it'll fill directly into the wet pond. But it's constantly, as it receives the water, it transfers it to the wet pond underground through a series of pipes.
So the wet pond will be below it, so when there's nothing in the dry pond, it'll just dry out?
Correct, that's right.
Yeah,
And
that's
the-
a huge plus from mosquito production.
Absolutely,
A
yes.
huge plus.
Yeah, the wet pond will just hold water at its control elevation.
Yep, good. Any other questions? I'll open the floor for public discussion. If you'd like to speak, come forward to one of the podiums and state your name and your address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Adelet. I live at 4570 57th Avenue. And I've been listening to everything, and it sounds good. There is it's a part of the package. There's West Guilford Industrial Corridor, and I wanted to make one little point. In that ordinance, it states that general industrial to any type of IG that comes into that area, they must accommodate industry and commerce in West Guilford in a manner compatible with community residents and businesses. It sounds like that's going to be the fact, but I just wanted to let you know that that's very important to us, the community, that it is compatible to the residents and the businesses because we are very serious about our health as well as our quality of life. Thank you.
Should staff open a dialogue with Joe?
Sure. Mr. Chair, for the record, Ryan Sweeney, Interim Assistant Community Development Director. Joe and I,
Yes.
Joe's been tracking this project for quite a while.
Right.
Yes.
And,
Great, so there is a dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have
yes.
dialogue.
Very
Good.
healthy dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page.
Yes.
Good.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you
yep.
all.
Would anyone else like to speak on this agenda item?
Good evening, I'm Rebecca Grohall with MBV Engineering. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner and the applicant. We just wanted to state our appreciation to staff for the review on this project, their support. We appreciate the comments from the West Gifford community that have given their input and want to build something that the community will be proud of. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Good. Do you have a dialogue with Mr. Avalette?
Not directly, but I know that they've sat in on several TRC committee
Okay.
meetings and given input, and I'm happy to give him my card if he has any
That'd be great.
questions.
Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be great.
All right, thank you.
Any questions? None? Anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the floor for public comment. Any additional commissioner questions? None on the left? None on the right? I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve.
Second?
Move to approve second. All in favor, aye? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good enough. Passes unanimously. The second item that is a non-consent item is Heritage Grove. This is a request for a major site plan and preliminary plat approval for an 81-unit residential plat oversight plan project to be known as Heritage Grove. Cookies and Crackers Corporation is the owner. Design and Entitlement Consultants LLC is the agent. This is located south of Oslo Road, approximately 800 feet east of 27th Avenue, southwest. The zoning is RM6, residential multifamily, up to 6 units per acre. The land use designation is L2, low-density residential 2, up to 6 units per acre. Density is 4.19 units per acre. Any declaration of ex parte communication? None. Everyone should be sworn in. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brandon Craig, Senior Planner, will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Before you tonight is the Heritage Grove Major Site Plan and Preliminary Plat, which is a plat oversight plan. The property is located south of Oslo Road, also known as 9th Street Southwest, near its intersection with 27th Avenue Southwest. It has a zoning of RM6, which is our residential multifamily 6 dwelling units to the acre. So just for clarification, the aerial is now going to be on the north is now going to be on the left side of the screen as opposed to the top of the screen in the past slide for all remaining slides. So on screen is an aerial of the site, gives you an idea of what the current conditions are on the site. It's a mostly wooded property. It's surrounded by residential on all sides, along with a vacant mobile home park to the west of the property. Site plan will call for 81 total residential units, which comprise 4.19 units to the acre, which is considerably less than the 6, or a maximum of 6 units that they could have on the development. They're also going to have a few neighborhood parks. They're going to have a pool, cabana, and parking area for guests on site as well. Traffic circulation plan calls for an internal loop road along with 2 cul-de-sacs to the north and south of the site. There's going to be 1 gated access and 1 access to Oslo Road. I'd also like to make special note that there's an existing westbound left turn lane on Oslo Road that will also serve this development as well. Stormwater plan calls for 2 dry retention ponds and 1 wet stormwater lake. Landscape plan calls for our standard roadway buffer, which in this case is going to be a 25-foot buffer, and then there's also going to be a 15-foot landscape buffer that's going to go around the whole entire perimeter of the site. So it's going to be well buffered from all the other residential properties, especially the single-family homes that are to the south of the site. Dedication and improvements for the site are internal sidewalks and a pedestrian system, street lighting, and common green space and recreation areas. Typically with residential projects too, we also require sidewalks to be along the right-of-way. However, because there is a presence of a canal on the northern part of this, sidewalks would not be required in this instance. So staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant major site plan and preliminary plat approval, which is the plat over site plan for the Heritage Grove project with the conditions listed in the staff report. These conditions revolve around the final landscape plans and street lighting designs, the final tree protection and mitigation plans, the installation of all landscaping and buffer improvements, the installation of all lighting improvements, and finally, the installation of all common area and project sidewalks. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Any commissioner questions, starting on the left?
Yes, the standard questions. What's the width of the standard lot? And some of the driveways look pretty short. Are they going to be full car length driveways?
So the majority of the lots across the development are 35-foot wide lots. This is because our plat over site plan process allows the lots to conform to the shape of the home, rather in a conventional subdivision where we would have larger lot sizes. There's also going to be some variations on the corner, depending on what the angle of the parcel actually is. It could be a little bit smaller than 35, or it could be larger than 35, just depending on where those corner cuts are.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, Mark, the driveways are at least long enough to accommodate a standard vehicle in the driveway, but then they'll also have garages as well.
And are they going to be one-car garages?
I believe most of them are two, but again, those are details that come with the house plans. At minimum, they have to be able to accommodate two vehicles on site.
I think 35 foot is the shortest I've seen.
Right, again, because this is a plat over site plan, so the lot width is a little bit skewed in that it's strictly the width of the home. There's a common area platted in between each home. So rather than saying 50 feet with a 7.5-foot side setback on either side, it's actually platted on the walls of the home, if you will, and then there's a common area tract in between. So the number is a little bit misleading. This is a different type of development scheme.
There's 0 lot lines?
There, sort of. I mean, 0 in the sense that there are lot lines, but you're only platting effectively the building footprint plus a little bit of front and back.
So basically, it's all platted to the footprint of the home.
Correct, with a small amount of front and rear, and then everything else is common area.
What is the difference between the houses? 15 feet, 7.5 feet?
Typically, at minimum it's 10, otherwise you have to fireproof the eave. But if you look at some of the layout, you're gonna have 15, you're gonna have 10. There's actually, because there's a lot of curve, you're gonna actually have more space in between some of the homes. On the straights, it's 10.
So minimum of 10?
Minimum of 10.
Between the two houses, so
Correct.
basically 5 foot each. Yes,
I mean, again, plat over is kind of a reverse way of thinking, but yes, minimum of 10 separation.
Fire departments reviewed this?
Yes, they've reviewed it for access and infrastructure like hydrants. The individual homes will be reviewed at the time of home permit. But per fire code, the eave either has to be fireproofed or 10 feet apart.
Okay, and then regarding Mark's question about the driveways, is the driveway or is the lot deep enough to where the driveway with somebody sitting in it is not blocking that sidewalk that's there?
Yes, it's absolutely.
And then what about the access across the canal? I'm assuming they'll have to,
That'll be a fully constructed, driveway connection with a culvert crossing.
and last is, you mentioned the westbound turn lane is there, but eastbound coming in, there is no decel lane or anything?
That's correct. It did not trip it was nowhere near the trip requirement to require a right, eastbound right.
Well, that may be, but, I mean, somebody on Oslo Road's not doing 45 miles an hour, and if these people are trying to stop to turn in, that's something I'm not thrilled with.
There's no center turn there.
There's a left turn, there's no right turn, correct? There's no right turns on that whole stretch of Oslo
No,
Road.
I'm talking about a center turn.
Yes, there's an open center turn lane, that whole stretch of Oslo.
So it's 3-lane plus the left, if there is one, and
It's a 5-lane road, 2 eastbound, 2 west, and a left center, for lack of a better term, suicide lane, open left. Yeah, huge amount of volume for Oslo.
So what is the limit to it that would require some type of turn lane in there?
Right turns is 70 peak hour turns. For comparison, the project in its whole, in and out, is 83 peak hour. So they're about half of where they would need to be to trigger a right turn.
What does that correspond to as far as number of units? So,
Correct, yeah, they'd have to probably double the number of units to trigger a right turn lane.
seeing as though we had a Affordable Housing Committee meeting yesterday, when do you expect the affordable housing requirement, or at least discussion, to kick in?
In a conventional development, that's gonna be tough. That's probably gonna be more in a planned development type scheme where we would push to have affordable housing be a component of new planned developments. But that being,
Only big ones, much bigger than this?
I don't know that size is necessarily it's just it's the different types of development schemes. But I will say, and I can't speak for the clients there, or the applicants that are here, but when you are offering a plat-over product that's relatively sized, it's more affordable. It's certainly not gonna be, it's not gonna be affordable in the sense of, extremely low income, but it will be more affordable than, an 80-foot wide lot would be.
Good on the left? Any questions on the right? None. We will then open the floor for public comment, if anyone would like to make a public comment.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ken Delatorre with Design and Entitlement Consultants. We are the agent on behalf of the applicant, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to thank staff for their diligent efforts in working with our team and keeping the open lines of communication. And we want to also thank you, Commissioners, for your time and consideration, and our team is here should you have any other additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. And I had one question about the sidewalks.
Yes.
There's a drainage ditch on the same side of Oslo Road as the development. So will the sidewalks be on the opposite side of Oslo?
There's already an existing 8-foot wide sidewalk on Oslo Road on the north side of
Okay, so
Oslo.
there'd be no additional sidewalks required on
Correct.
Oslo?
Only within the project, and then
Okay.
it stops at the right-of-way line.
Any other questions?
Maybe I should have asked this before, but do you envision this to be mostly one story, or mostly two, or a mix?
One story, single story.
Anything else, Chip?
I saw a note in there, there was not a requirement for a secondary entrance for fire purposes or whatever, which I understand what's to the south and to the east, but to the west is another parcel of land. There's not something that we could pre-plan for that, because that's obviously going to be developed too.
That is developed, isn't it?
Right,
It's the old trailer park.
Oh, to the west. Again, you're right, so the requirement is 100 units or more, which triggers the secondary emergency access. But for the parcel to the west, they have frontage on Oslo as well as 27th. So I think that parcel will be potentially better served to have access on either.
I understand. I'm just more worried about this piece, especially if they're coming over a ditch.
I understand. The entrance itself is pretty substantial. I think, requirements are, requirements are requirements. We can't exceed those.
Anything else? In that case, call for motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed?
Correct.
Okay.
Chip opposed. Chip
Chip.
Landers.
Yeah.
All right. Move to our third agenda item, and it is a public hearing. It is consideration of a staff-initiated land development regulation amendments for increased size allowances for accessory structures on large, single-family parcels. Everyone should have been sworn in, so staff presentation, please.
You're good to go. I shouldn't have to do this, but I'll introduce Andy, Interim Community Development Director.
Thank you, Ryan. And again, for the record, Andy Sopcich, Interim Community Development Director. And what we have for you this evening is a land development regulation amendment to allow larger accessory structures. And as Ryan mentioned, this is a staff-initiated amendment. And it really serves to touch on 2 points here. The first is to clarify the definition of accessory structures, and the second is to increase the size for accessory structures in certain situations. And to give you a little background on the first point, an accessory structure is typically one that is incidental and subordinate to the primary or principal structure. So, for example, on a single-family lot, the main house would be the primary or principal structure, and an accessory structure could be something like a detached garage, a storage building, maybe a accessory dwelling unit. And so how we've kind of administered that is, so long as the accessory structure is smaller, even by 1 square foot to the main structure, we considered it an accessory structure. Why we wanted to clarify this a little bit is the code doesn't really say how to measure those structures, or what do you do when you have multiple accessory structures on the property. So in the clarification, it'll be the sum of all the accessory structures. So we add each one up, and so long as the sum is less by 1 square foot than the primary structure, still an accessory. And we further clarify that it's the kind of the enclosed space of the structures that we're measuring type for type. Not like a pole barn wouldn't count against this because it's open-sided. So it's really the enclosed space. So that's the first point, why we wanted to kind of clarify the LDRs here. And the second is, and I'll put some aerials up here to kind of give you some context. So on the far left is a 10-acre property, then a 5-acre, then a 2-acre, then a third of an acre. And so in each one of these examples, they've essentially used up their allowance for an accessory structure. So if the owners of the 10-acre would come in and say, hey, I want to do a 250 square foot shed, we would say, oh, you don't have that balance left to use, right? Because we use that 1 square foot rule. But as you get down, to the smaller lots, like the third of an acre, it's almost self-regulating in a sense that on smaller lots, you really can't go much more than a 1-to-1 ratio because by the time you meet setbacks and other things, there's really not any space. So what we want to kind of do is allow for more accessory structure on larger properties, and so we developed a bit of a ratio. So to kind of summarize, on half-acre properties or smaller, there's really no change. We're still going to use the idea that all the accessory structures have to be at least 1 square foot smaller than the main or principal structure. However, if you're half an acre to under 1 acre, we have a 1.5 ratio. So for an example, if you have a 2,000 square foot house, we would allow up to 3,000 square feet of accessory structure. If you're 1 acre to under 4.59 acres, it would be a 2 times ratio. And the reason we use the 4.59 is because a lot of our 5-acre agricultural tracts are actually 200,000 square feet, which is 4.59 acres. That's the minimum size in that zoning district. And lastly, if you're over the 4.59 acres, we would use a 3 times ratio there. So staff's recommendation here is that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed accessory structures LDR amendments.
Thank you, Andy. Commissioner questions, starting on the right?
I just compliment staff for self-initiating this LDR change. Sounds like it's going to be a way of government kind of getting out of the way and allowing landowners to fully utilize their, exercise their property rights. I think it's a great LDR. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just would like to get clarification on one thing. It's a no-brainer if we're dealing with multiple accessory structures. But in a situation where, say you got a 5-acre piece of land, a 3,000 square foot home, and you're only contemplating putting one accessory structure, does that open you up to be able to put a 9,000 square foot detached garage?
You could, in theory, yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Goes over 5 acres, right?
Yeah, if you're over the
Yeah,
5-acre and
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
You good?
Yes.
Okay, anything else here? All right, anything on the left?
Just terrific idea. This is good stuff here.
One thing, well, maybe two. It would be helpful to me if, I saw you had a little underline and strikeout, but if there were a clearer comparison between the present condition and the proposed condition. And the other question I had was, you're taking gross square footage, not under air or anything else?
Anything under roof is what they're considering main structure. Garage, patio, everything.
No.
It's just a living area?
Enclosed, but not necessarily heated or cooled. So if you have an attached garage, that counts. The
Right,
whole
under-
point.
Under the
correct,
main structure's roof.
Right, but not necessarily heated or.
But not
heated
a
and-
porch, not a
If it's
front porch or back porch.
Even if it's underneath the roof? What if it's
Enclosed inside the 4 walls is the key.
Inside of the, okay.
But-
Inside the perimeter block
That's
walls.
the principal structure as
Correct,
well?
correct. Yes. Yeah, because oftentimes, if I could, Mr. Chair, Mark, more often than not, your typical single-family home, you have the heated and cooled living space, but you also have an attached garage. That's what constitutes really the massing of your building. Covered patios, screen-in porches, they try to play games, if you will. But the whole point is to try to match the massing of the building. If we did heated and cooled, that would kind of cut against your underlying number for the principal structure.
So just build a bigger house. You can do whatever you want after that, right?
And I would, if I could, 2 things. One, I appreciate you all complimenting staff, but this is really just resolving an issue that we've been dealing with years. Probably, I'd say once a week, we have someone that comes in that, I need 10 more square feet. And the other thing is the board, we did bounce this off the board in July, and they were fully supportive of it as well. So they're,
And it's hard for some people to accept when you own a significant piece of property
Sure.
that you're under such a tight restriction on accessory buildings. It's kind of the point of buying.
this is not going to change your typical quarter-acre residential, we're not going to see giant garages on those lots.
Yeah, we've really had trouble explaining, to your point, somebody with 5 or 10 acres, why they can't have a little bit, it's hard for us to justify. Yes, it's in the code, but common sense tells you it doesn't.
I agree. This is, like I said, this is a very good change.
What about on a larger lot, if someone wanted to build an accessory structure and then use it as a primary structure?
I mean, it's really got to be one or the other, so that, it can't serve 2 roles. It's got to be one or the other.
How do you define that? I mean, what if somebody built a much bigger, you can have 2.5 times? What if somebody wanted to build a building twice as big as their primary structure and air condition it and do all the other things to make it into a regular home, and then they move into that?
If I may, Mr. Moocher, that sounds like something we've seen come across a couple of times with an accessory dwelling unit. So we've had this where there's someone that lives in an accessory dwelling, this little like smaller house. And then they come up with funds to later build the bigger house of their dreams. They want to build it on the same lot. So they will start building that, and in essence, then they will file the paperwork for the limitations of the accessory dwelling unit on the old or the smaller one, and that essentially becomes the accessory dwelling unit, and the new one becomes the primary unit. That's the way that that would work. So there is, I have seen about 2 of those come through my office in the past, I don't know, month or 2. So that's kind of how that one would work.
Well, it seems to me that there aren't many restrictions on the accessory dwelling unit except size.
Well, there's 15 different restrictions on an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
Everything from size and function, form, parking. There's quite a bit of limitations.
What about commercial use? Because I'm remembering a couple years ago, we had a landscaper that had a lot of parking going on, and neighbors were complaining about the amount of commercial vehicles being used. Is
This is purely residential.
purely
single
residential, so
family,
this
correct.
does not contemplate and get
And
into
that case also fell under the agricultural exemption,
That's
so
what
it
it was,
wasn't even
okay.
something we could regulate.
But what you're probably recalling is the whole concept of accessory and subordinate, and that was different animal for different. I'd rather not discuss right now.
I was like, I don't want to open a can of worms, but I
Yeah,
remember that. All
precisely.
right.
Go ahead, Chip.
So as I'm reading this, what we used to refer to as an accessory structure, meaning residential, is now an accessory apartment? Is that correct?
I mean, generally speaking, what we're really talking about is the home is still the principal use. A single-family home is the principal use. And what a lot of arguments, for lack of a better term, we'd have to say somebody has a 1,500 square foot home. They'd already have a 1,000 square foot detached garage, and they wanted to do a second one. And we interpreted it that all of the structures cumulatively needed to be less. And they said, no, I can have 2 1,000 square foot, but net total is 2,000. So we've tightened that side up. But what we allowed on the other end is, as your property gets bigger, you can, I mean, the 0.5 to 1 is only 1.5 times. It's not a considerable increase. But then as you get bigger, over 1 and then over 5, 4.5, for lack of a better term, you can go considerably bigger.
Well, as Mr. Mucher was pointing out, and having lived on acreage and have numerous clients that want to do so as well, if they build a 2,500 square foot house on 5 acres, then they build the accessory structure, which is at least 5,000 square feet, and then they decide to make that living area.
Right, they're
Then you
gonna.
go back,
right,
well, then the problem is, that's 2,500 square foot accessory apartment, and that's,
Way too big. That's
well,
gonna-
then what do you do?
That's, you can't do that.
Yeah, we couldn't approve it.
Yeah, you can't do it that way. So,
So
what's.
you would never approve making the 5,000 square foot accessory structure?
Correct. 'Cause it wouldn't be permitted that way. They would come in as a 5,000 square foot home. If they tried to convert it. What Susan was probably alluding to, and what we've seen a lot, and, usually people plan for this ahead of time, is they know that's their plan. So we tell them, if that's your plan, then don't back yourself into a corner. Plan your small home to meet the criteria for when your big home is established. And we walk them through that, because ultimately, there are size caps on the accessory dwelling.
Understood, but knowing, I mean, I've seen a lot of pole barns that decide to become residential units.
Well, that's a different animal as well.
Well, but in this particular case, they built, I mean, well, would a pole barn, because that's an open area, is that still going to be considered as part of this? They could build a 5,000 square foot pole barn.
Yeah, we wouldn't consider unenclosed space like a pole barn to count against this allowance.
Okay. But if they enclosed it, they got a permit to enclose it, then the existing structure is going to be a problem one way or another. You can't make them tear it down.
We wouldn't permit the enclosing.
Yeah, we
I
just wouldn't allow them
understand,
to
but,
enclose.
I mean, they come in after the fact.
Yeah.
So.
Shame on you.
Well, there's always a gray area there for some people. But these are all non-residential, so we don't have to worry about the bed and breakfast being built.
Right.
As far as that goes. And I know that now we have another opportunity where they could have 2 accessory apartments, as we call them, because that's like your 4.59 acres. I call that the Indian River 5 acres to people I'm dealing with, because that's what it is, in essence is. But, okay. I mean, I love the concept. I just want to make sure that the neighbors are protected too, and
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for anyone that would like to comment. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Have all your questions been answered? Call for a vote.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We've got approval, second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition. It passes unanimously. Very good. Any commissioner matters?
Yes.
Commissioner matter, yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Our agenda packet included two projects that had tree mitigation tied to it. And a number of years ago, we chatted about that, but we haven't recently. And I am still curious as to what the tree mitigation program is all about, and whether we are really mitigating, or whether we have a large bank account somewhere filled with money that we're not using. And I don't know, it's probably out of the realm of P and Z, but I am curious if you could answer any of those questions.
Sure, I can answer. So you're probably referring to the fee in lieu payments where folks are
Yes.
not able to mitigate on site, which we always push them towards that as our preferred option. When they can't, they can pay into a fund, and that fund has regulations on it as far as how we can use the money. So we can use it to replant native vegetation in public areas. And we've used that throughout the county. Some of our roadway projects, we do the median plantings, and we've done it in parks as well.
But is there activity, Andy? I mean, are we actually planting trees? That's really what my point is, that, is the county replacing the trees that have been paid for to be mitigated?
Yes, we've certainly used probably over $1 million of that funding since I've been here to do native plantings, yes. So, I mean, as far as a one-to-one, if we've replaced everything that came out, I don't know that offhand, but I know we have used the funding.
But it is ongoing, there is a
It is,
program?
absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
And are the plantings in the median of roads, are they replaced as needed? And how do you decide when they need to be replaced?
I think we've used it on new construction, so when we've widened a road and done, started over, we've used the native plants there.
$1 million sounds like a lot to me, but is $1 million out of a pot of $1.5 million or a pot of 10, or
I
how do you
say
scale that?
in about the last 20 years that I've been here, we've collected probably close to $2 million total. So we've used about half of that fund balance.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, well, the reason it weighs on my mind is, the trees take a long time to grow. And I also question whether if you take out oaks in one project and then you replace them with small trees in the right-of-way, or not in the right-of-way, but in the, whatever it's called.
Median, yeah.
I don't know if we're getting an even swap. And I was just wondering if there are other ways to approach it.
Yeah, I think we've kind of stumbled on the requirement that it has to be a public space where we put them back. I mean, we wouldn't put them on private property, but just finding an appropriate public area where we can put the trees, where people can see them and enjoy them is kind of where we've focused our efforts.
And are those decisions made by staff?
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a citizen input, I guess. Someone whispered in my ear that there's a lot of, I guess, they thought unpermitted building activity in the area of 82nd Avenue at the St. Lucie County line. Just some stuff going on out there, maybe.
Well, I mean, we have a number of different avenues for folks to report those. They can do it online, they can call us. We have a contractor licensing division that does nothing but vet contractors and unpermitted work.
Okay. Well, maybe as a result of my comment, you could send somebody out there.
Yes, now keep in mind, new state rules that came into effect about a year ago, we have to include the name and address of a complainant on any complaint. So we would, if this is your complaint, we would have to type your name and address in there as the complainant.
I
Just so
haven't,
you're aware, just so you're aware.
I haven't witnessed any of that. but,
Well, you're not the neighbor, you're not going to have to worry.
No, but I don't know that, I don't know the wisdom of that new rule.
You gonna take a drive tomorrow, Mark?
Not the right to face your accuser, huh?
So it sounds to me like whoever whispered in your ear, they need to make the complaint, not you.
Yes.
According to this new rule, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we hear all the time about the code enforcement people just driving around and seeing stuff. I suppose that's one way to get around it. I don't, is there a good reason for that rule?
Not
If-
that I'm aware of.
It's obviously a rule that the Florida legislature thought would be a good idea. I can't speak to the exact good reason or not, but it has been the rule for a little while. And our code enforcement, unfortunately, we don't have a large staff of code enforcement, so they can't just drive around in the car all day. So we are complaint driven. And let me tell you that the change in rule hasn't necessarily taken down the number of complaints. If people really care, they call and make the complaints.
Thank you. Any other commissioner matters? Planning matters.
Mr. Chair, we are hoping to cancel the September 14th P and Z, but we are planning on having the September 28th. We'll be having another public hearing for an LER amendment that we'll be advertising for soon.
Is there any reason why, has it been the last 3 meetings that have been canceled?
I think it's a combination of being summer, and luckily, some of the applicants were generous enough to be agreeable to try to land on one agenda. I've been reminded several times it's not very efficient to have one item on the agenda, so try our best to queue 3 or 4 folks together.
Saved up and got 3.
There we go.
Anything else? Attorney matters?
None, thank you.
Excellent. We're adjourned.